At 10:42 on a Thursday night, my 40-year-old son came through my side door, locked it behind him, and said, "Dad, if Mom calls, don't tell her I'm here." Damon was still wearing the black work shirt from his food truck, the one with his name stitched over the pocket. His breathing was quick, and he kept looking through the narrow window beside the door. "You are the only person in this family who lets a man finish before you decide about him," he said. "Mom hears 3 words, and she has already made the ruling." I had just opened my mouth to ask what happened when somebody started pounding on the front door. Not knocking, pounding. 3 hard blows, a pause, then 3 more. Damon looked at me. "Dad, please." I spent 36 years dispatching city buses through breakdowns, accidents, and driver shortages. That work taught me to slow the room down before panic chose the next move. So I did not hide my son. I opened the front door. Marlene Carter stood on my porch in house shoes and a raincoat pulled over her pajamas. Her daughter, Aaliyah, was one of 14 young musicians scheduled to leave the following week for a regional performance festival. "Mr. Brooks," she said, "where is Damon?" I looked over my shoulder. Damon had stepped into the hallway light. Marlene's face tightened. "The travel company says it never received the final payment. Jamal says $18,600 is gone, and your son walked out of the arts center while 14 families were asking what happened." Damon raised both hands. "It is not gone, it is delayed." "Then why did you leave?" "It's a banking problem." "Then why are you hiding at your father's house?" Damon looked at me the way he used to when he was 12 and had broken something he thought I could repair before his mother saw it. I picked up my phone. "What are you doing?" he asked. "Calling your mother." His voice dropped. "Dad, don't." I pressed Ruth's name and put the call on speaker. She answered on the second ring. Behind her, I could hear voices and the hollow echo of the East River Community Arts Center. "Isaiah?" "I'm here with Damon and Marlene," I said. "Tell me what happened." There was a brief silence. Then Ruth said, "Ask him why he told me you approved the transfer." That was when I understood the missing money was only part of the problem. Damon started talking before I could answer. "Mom misunderstood me." Ruth's voice stayed level. "I did not misunderstand the sentence. Dad said it was fine for a few days." I said I thought Dad would understand. "No, you said he approved it." Marlene stepped farther into the living room. Rainwater darkened the shoulders of her coat. "Approved what?" she asked. Damon stared at the floor. I said, "We are going back to the arts center." He shook his head. "We can handle this here." "No. This is not just our family's problem." Before we left, Marlene told me the travel company would hold the students' reservations until Monday at 3 o'clock. After that, the buses, rooms, and performance slots could be released to another group. It was Thursday night. 14 young people had spent 11 months earning that trip, and my son had come to my house before he had gone back to face them. When your adult child asks you to protect a lie, love can make the next step harder than it should be. Subscribe to Wise Dad Stories if you believe helping families should never require becoming part of the deception. The arts center was 12 minutes from my house. Damon stared at his phone the entire way. "What did you transfer?" I asked. "The final travel payment." "To where?" "I can fix it." "That does not answer me," he exhaled. "Can we not do your dispatcher thing?" My name was used to approve something I knew nothing about. "I want exact answers." He turned toward the window and said nothing. The East River Community Arts Center had once been a furniture warehouse. On Thursday nights, it usually echoed with trumpets, piano scales, and teenagers laughing in the hall. That night, adults spoke softly because they did not want their children to hear fear. 14 tagged instrument cases stood along the rehearsal room wall. Aaliyah Carter sat nearby with a snare practice pad on her knees. She looked up when I entered. "Mr. Brooks, are we still going?" I wanted to tell her yes, but a hopeful answer without facts would have been another kind of lie. "We are trying to find out exactly what happened," I said. "Nobody is making promises yet." She nodded and looked back down at the pad. The trip was not a luxury reward handed to them because adults felt generous. The students had earned their places through auditions, attendance, and community service. Their families had paid what they could in installments. Some had saved $20 at a time. Aaliyah's mother worked weekend shifts at a pharmacy and still helped run every fundraiser. That was why the instrument cases bothered me. They were already packed. Names were taped to the handles in blue painter's tape. One trumpet case had a bus-shaped sticker on it because I had once spoken to the group about public transportation jobs. Those cases made the missing money feel less like a number and more like 14 promises waiting against a wall. Near the rehearsal room entrance hung a shadow box containing my daughter Nia's white marching snare drumsticks. They were scuffed near the tips and wrapped with faded tape. Nia had used them during her final high school performance, back when she believed every flat surface in our house existed for practicing rhythms. Damon passed the display without looking at it. That caught my attention. He usually tapped the frame with 2 fingers when he came in, an old habit of his. That night, he kept his face turned toward the office. 8 years had passed since we lost Nia. 6 years had passed since Ruth and I helped establish the scholarship in her name. The Arts Center administered the account, kept the records, and provided the legal and financial structure. Damon served as volunteer treasurer and had authorized online access. Ruth stood at a folding table, writing parents' phone numbers on a yellow legal pad. She had spent 31 years teaching choir in public schools. Panic never impressed her. She once calmed 60 middle school singers after a fire alarm went off 5 minutes before a concert. She looked at Damon, then at me. Jamal is waiting. Jamal Reyes, the Arts Center's executive director, sat behind his desk with his tie loosened and his laptop open beside printed account pages. Marlene came in behind us and closed the door. Jamal looked at Damon. I suspended your online access. You did not need to do that. Yes, I did. It was a temporary transfer. Money moves in and out of that account every month. Reimbursements, vendor holds, deposits that sit for a week. This is housekeeping. Jamal, you are treating maintenance like a crime. Jamal turned the laptop toward us. The travel company never received the final payment. At 3:18 this afternoon, $18,600 left the scholarship travel account. It went to an account listed under Brooks Street Kitchen, LLC. That was Damon's business. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then Damon said, I can put it back. Ruth folded her arms. When? Monday. Jamal asked, why Monday? I have a catering payment coming. Guaranteed? It is a signed contract. That is not the same thing. Damon's jaw tightened. The event is Saturday. They pay Monday morning. After the event is completed? Yes. So you moved restricted scholarship funds into your business to cover expenses for work you have not completed. Damon looked at me. Dad, I just needed a few days. I asked. For what? He leaned back. My refrigeration unit and generator were going to be taken. If I lose them, I lose the contract. If I lose the contract, I lose the business. Ruth said, and if the students lose their trip? They won't. Jamal closed the laptop. You no longer get to make that promise by yourself. He explained that the scholarship donations were restricted for student travel. Damon had legitimate treasurer access, but the center had recently changed banking platforms. A planned second approval safeguard had not yet been activated on every account. Damon used the gap. Jamal said he would call Mrs. Ellison, the board's finance representative, before midnight. After that, he would preserve the records, contact the center's accountant and insurer, and follow whatever reporting steps their advisors required. Damon sat forward. You are making this bigger than it needs to be. Marlene said, 14 families are sitting outside because you moved their children's money into your business. It is not their money. The room went still. Damon seemed to hear himself only after the words were out. Ruth's voice became very quiet. Whose money is it? That is not what I meant. What did you mean? The The scholarship is ours. Nia was our family. Marlene stared at him. My daughter sold barbecue plates for 3 weekends. Mr. Holloway's church gave $800. Those children cleaned up after the river festival. That account does not belong to your family because your sister's picture is on the brochure. Damon looked toward the office window. Jamal lifted a hand before the argument could spread. We are not settling this tonight, he said. Tonight we are securing access and confirming the deadline. Tomorrow, the board will be informed. Damon, I need written acknowledgement that you initiated the transfer. Damon pushed back his chair. I need to talk to my father. Ruth looked at me. There was anger in her face, but also something else. She knew Damon. She also knew how often I stepped between him and consequences. Jamal gave us 10 minutes in the empty choir room. Damon closed the door behind us. Dad, you know I was not trying to hurt those kids. Trying is not what moved the money. I had 48 hours before they took the equipment. You had 48 hours to call me. He laughed once, without humor. And hear another lecture about planning? You have borrowed money from me before. That is the problem. Everybody sees me as the one who needs saving. So you used money that was not yours. I borrowed it. Who agreed to the loan? He looked away. I said, your mother says you told her I approved it. I knew you would understand. Understanding comes after the truth. He paced toward the piano and back. If Jamal reports this as theft, I could lose everything. I do not control what Jamal reports. You can tell him it was a family decision. Was it? You and Mom founded the scholarship. I am your son. I thought you would help me. That is not permission. He lowered his voice. Dad, I am asking you not to let one mistake destroy me. Behind the door, somebody rolled a cart down the hall. Its wheels rattled over the old concrete floor. I thought about the times I had stepped in before Ruth could see how serious Damon's problems were. 3 years earlier, I paid the final installment on his first commercial refrigerator after he missed 2 payments. I told Ruth he had negotiated an extension. The following year, he borrowed $6,000 for repairs. He repaid less than half. I told Ruth the loan was settled because I did not want her to lose confidence in him. For nearly 2 years, I let him store equipment in my garage, use my outlets, and meet vendors at my house as if the property were part of his business. Each rescue seemed small enough to call temporary. Each concealment seemed private enough to excuse. Damon must have seen the answer changing on my face. Dad? I opened the choir room door. What are you going to tell them? He asked. What I know. His shoulders dropped. That is not what fathers do. I looked back at him. It is what I am doing tonight. Ruth was waiting in the hallway. Damon walked past her without speaking. She stayed where she was and looked at me. Is this the first time? She asked. The answer that might have protected my marriage for another hour was yes. I had spent years convincing myself that small lies did not count if they prevented larger pain. But Damon had not learned that reasoning by himself. No, I said. Ruth's face did not change. That was worse than if she had shouted. How many times? I need to think through it. You always know the sequence, Isaiah. That sentence stayed with me. We went back into Jamal's office. Damon signed a short acknowledgement stating that he initiated the transfer without documented authorization. Jamal told the parents the trip was not canceled, but its status was uncertain. Ruth and I drove home separately. Damon did not come with either of us. At home, Ruth sat at the kitchen table while I made coffee. Neither of us drank. I told her about the refrigerator payment, the repair loan, the garage, and the bills I had covered. I admitted that I had called Damon's missed commitments scheduling confusion when I knew he had simply failed to show up. When I finished, she said, "You let me praise him for solving problems you solved." I thought I was protecting his dignity. You were protecting yourself from watching him be disappointed in you. That hurt because it was true. Then she said, "He used your name because he knew I would trust it more than my own questions." I am sorry. I know. It was acknowledgement, not forgiveness. Jamal wants us there at 8, she said. Try to sleep. I did not sleep much. At 6:15 the next morning, I took an old route pad from my desk. Whenever several people described the same problem differently, I wrote down times before opinions. By 8, Ruth and I were back at the Arts Center. Jamal had spoken with the travel company. The reservations would remain on hold until Monday at 3. The company would accept verified funds or a formal payment arrangement approved by the Arts Center's board. Marlene arrived with messages from the parent group. At 2:54 Thursday afternoon, Damon told the parents the final payment had cleared. At 3:07, he emailed the travel coordinator, asking for a temporary hold because of a processing delay. At 3:18, the money entered his business account. At 3:26, he texted Ruth. Dad said it was fine for a few days. Don't worry the families until Monday. At 4:02, he told Jamal the bank had flagged the travel company's account. At 7:40, when the travel company contacted the Arts Center directly, Damon stopped answering his phone. At 9:58, he left the building. At 10:42, he entered my house and asked me to hide him. I wrote the times in one column. Ruth read them once. He told each person the part that would keep us from calling someone else. That was exactly what he had done. A driver might give dispatch a vague explanation after missing a turn, but when the explanation changed with every question, the problem was no longer the turn. Damon had built his plan out of separate conversations. It began to fail when we put them together. At 9:30, Damon arrived carrying 2 coffees. He offered one to Ruth. She did not take it. Jamal showed him the timeline. Damon read the first entries and pushed the page away. You are making it look planned. Are any of the times wrong? I asked. The situation kept changing. The money moved after you told the parents it had already been paid. He leaned back. I knew I could replace it. Jamal asked, how much remains in the business account? Damon hesitated. Damon, Ruth said, $10,940. Marlene closed her eyes. I asked, where is the rest? Operating expenses, fuel, supplies, a deposit for Saturday. And the equipment company? He did not answer. That afternoon, Marlene found a folded final demand notice inside a plastic scholarship supply folder Damon had been using for sign-in sheets. The refrigeration unit and mobile generator were scheduled for repossession unless he paid $7,480. When I showed Damon the notice, he rubbed both hands over his face. I needed working cash too, he said. Paying the equipment company was not enough. I had to complete the event. The Saturday catering contract was worth nearly $22,000. Damon expected payment Monday morning, but the contract allowed delays and deductions if the event did not go as planned. You put the trip on the success of one job, I said. The client always pays. You were already behind with the company financing your equipment. He stood so quickly that the chair scraped the floor. You think I do not know how this looks? I am asking why you decided the scholarship should carry the risk. His expression changed. For the first time since he entered my house, the anger looked older than the crisis. Because I was tired, he said. Of what? Of being the child you have to explain after everybody finishes talking about Nia. Ruth went still beside me. Damon looked toward the rehearsal room door but not at the drumsticks beyond it. She gets a scholarship. She gets a picture in the lobby. Every year people talk about how disciplined she was and how much she cared about kids. I run fundraisers. I haul instruments. I sell plates in parking lots until midnight. Then my business struggles, and I am the unreliable one again. Ruth said, your sister died. I know. Then stop talking, as if she chose to leave you with a comparison. I am not blaming her. You used a program in her name to hide what you were doing. Damon looked down. I remembered Nia at 17, tapping those white drumsticks against our kitchen table while Ruth threatened to hide them in the freezer. Nia was generous, But she was not perfect. She forgot birthdays, left wet towels on the floor, and could be stubborn enough to make an entire room follow her rhythm. After she died, we polished those edges away. Damon had spent 8 years standing beside a memory no living person could compete with. That was our failure. It was not authorization. I said, "You should have told us what this felt like." He looked at me. "Would it have changed anything?" "I do not know. You never gave us the chance." Late Friday afternoon, the center's accountant confirmed the $10,940 could be returned immediately. Damon transferred it back under Jamal's supervision. The advisors made one point clear: returning money did not erase how it had been moved. That evening, Jamal met the waiting families in the rehearsal room. He did not soften the seriousness, and he did not speculate about what might happen to the person responsible. He said access had been secured, most of the money had been located, and the board would meet Sunday. Damon was not named. The students did not need every painful detail. They needed adults who would keep the trip from becoming their punishment. One father asked whether the students should unpack. Jamal looked toward the 14 cases along the wall. "Not yet," he said. It was a small answer, but it changed the room. Parents began discussing rides, meals, and what they could contribute if new fees appeared. Nobody suggested making the children confront Damon. Nobody asked Aaliyah, or the others, to prove how badly they wanted the trip. Marlene came to stand beside me afterward. "I am still angry," she said. "You have reason, but I do not want his name dragged through the kids' group chats." "Neither do I." She nodded toward Damon, who stood alone near the office. "Then make sure your family does not confuse privacy with hiding again." I told her I would not. Damon still believed there was one path around all of it. May. He asked me to meet him at my garage. I found him standing beside the stainless prep table he had stored there for almost a year. The garage smelled faintly of grease and smoked paprika. Half the shelves held my tools. The other half had slowly become his. He did not begin with an apology. He began with aversion. "If you tell the board it was an approved emergency loan, they can treat it as a governance mistake." I stared at him. "You and Mom are founders," he continued. "I am treasurer. We say we made a bad decision under pressure. I pay it back. The kids travel. Nobody loses everything." "Did your mother approve the transfer?" "No." "Did I?" "You would have helped me." "That is not the same thing." He gripped the edge of the prep table. "If this gets reported the wrong way, I could lose contracts. People could search my name and find it forever." "You were worried about your name when you used mine." He flinched. I panicked. "You asked me to hide you before I knew what happened." I was scared. "And now you want me to confirm something that never happened." He turned away. Fathers are supposed to keep their sons from being destroyed by one mistake. I looked around the garage, at the extension cords I bought because his generator kept tripping my breaker, at the shelves I cleared when he said storage fees were hurting him, at the business signs leaning against the wall, each one carrying his name in bold letters. I had spent years trying to keep him from feeling like a failure. All I had done was shift the cost of his failures to other people. "You did not come to my house because you trusted me," I said. "You came because you thought I would lie better than you did." He looked at me then. There was anger in his face, but underneath it was recognition. "I helped you avoid smaller consequences," I said. "I am not helping you avoid this one." He swallowed. "So that is it?" "No. You return what remains. You cooperate with Jamal. You sell what you can legally sell. You tell the board exactly what you did. And if that kills the business, the scholarship cannot carry your business. What about family? You are still my son. You are not entitled to my silence." He left without another word. I stood in the garage for several minutes. Then I began putting his business supplies into labeled boxes, not because I was throwing him out of the family, because my help needed edges. Saturday morning, a licensed dealer inspected the trailer, warming cabinets, and prep table that were not covered by the finance company's lien offered $4,860 and agreed to pay Monday morning. Damon signed. Sunday's board meeting took place in the small conference room beside the rehearsal hall. Through the open doorway, I could see Nia's drumsticks in their shadow box. Present were Damon, Ruth, Jamal, Marlene, Mrs. Ellison, and me. No students were in the room. Jamal stated the confirmed facts. He kept it brief. Mrs. Ellison asked Damon one question first. Did anyone authorize you to move the scholarship funds into your business? Damon looked at me. I stayed quiet. No, he said. Did your father approve it? No. Did your mother approve it? No. Did Mr. Reyes approve it? No. The room seemed to settle after that. The truth was no longer hidden behind timing, intention, or family language. Mrs. Ellison asked why he told different people that approval had been given. Because I thought I could put it back before it affected anyone, Damon said. Marlene replied, It affected people the moment you decided their work was available to you. He nodded. Ruth spoke next. You told me Isaiah agreed because you knew I trusted his name. You told him I postponed the trip because you knew he trusted mine. You used our marriage to keep us from comparing what you said. Damon rubbed his thumb along the edge of the table. I was trying to keep my business alive. Jamal said, with restricted community funds. I know. Then say what you did without changing the name of it. Damon looked toward the open doorway. His eyes settled on Nia's drumsticks. I do not know how to be the child who stayed, he said. Nobody interrupted him. Every good thing in this family has her name on it. Every bad thing has mine. I thought if the food truck worked, if I helped the program, if I was useful enough, maybe I would not feel like the extra person in my own family. Ruth's eyes filled, but her voice remained steady. You were never extra. It did not feel that way. I believe you, she said. And I am sorry for the ways we made grief into a room you could not enter. But those children were not responsible for opening it. Damon lowered his head. I spoke then. I need to say something before the board decides what happens next. I told the room about the refrigerator payment, the repair loan, the garage, and the problems I had hidden from Ruth. I did not give every private detail. I gave enough for them to understand why Damon believed I might protect him again. I did not approve this transfer, I said, but I taught my son that if he kept a problem quiet, I might fix it before anyone else saw it. Damon looked at me. That ends now. Mrs. Ellison did not soften the arithmetic. $10,940 is back in the account, she said. The equipment sale brings $4,860 tomorrow morning. That leaves $2,800 short, and the travel company needs verified funds by 3 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. She let that sit. The board can advance the difference from unrestricted operating reserve. It is not a gift. You would owe it under a restitution agreement, along with any verified recovery costs. You would surrender all program access and cooperate with the review. And if I do not sign, then we advance it anyway, and we continue recovery and reporting without you. Damon asked, could I stay involved with the students? No money, just events. Jamal answered gently, not now. The program cannot ask families to separate your good intentions from what happened every time you walk into the room. Damon's face tightened. He looked at Ruth, then at me. What if the business does not survive this? I said, then you rebuild something smaller with money you are allowed to use. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he nodded. I will cooperate. He signed the removal of access and the restitution agreement. The paperwork mattered, but the important part had already happened. He had said no one approved it. He had stopped asking us to rename it. Monday morning, the dealer delivered the cashier's check. The board approved the advance. The travel company confirmed receipt at 1:40, an hour and 20 minutes before the deadline. The 14 students left the following Saturday. Damon did not go with them. Aaliyah sent Ruth and me a short video from the festival. The sound was distorted because she recorded from the side of the stage, but I could see the percussion section clearly. She struck the opening rhythm, glanced toward the conductor, and smiled when the brass entered on time. Ruth watched it twice. Then she handed me the phone. Naya would have complained about that tempo. I laughed for the first time in several days. She would have complained about the lighting too. And the uniforms. She hated those uniforms. We sat in the kitchen, talking about a daughter who had been dead 8 years and remembering her as a person instead of a memorial. The Arts Center activated dual authorization on every restricted account. Monthly statements went to more than one board member. Damon's name disappeared from the scholarship website and bank access. The accountant, insurer, board, and advisors handled the formal process. I did not control it, and Damon could not bargain around it through me. His food truck stopped operating for several months. He sold the backup equipment, lost the Saturday contract, and took catering shifts with another company. His first restitution payment was small. The second came on time. The third arrived 2 days early. I noticed, but I did not praise him for meeting an obligation. Ruth and I set clear rules. No private loans, no use of our address for business, no garage storage, and no separate money requests to one parent. Damon could still come for dinner, call, or argue with me about baseball in the backyard. He was not cut out of the family. But family no longer meant access without consent. My own consequence took longer. Ruth trusted me less for a while. One afternoon, about 6 weeks after the trip, Damon called and asked whether I knew anyone who might buy a used commercial sink. I told him I would think about it. That evening, Ruth asked, "Did he ask you for money?" "No." He asked about a buyer. She watched me for a moment. "And that is all?" "That is all. You can see the message." I handed her the phone without irritation. She read it and gave it back. "Thank you," she said. It was a small exchange, but it mattered. Months earlier, I would have treated verification as an insult. Now I understood that trust returned through evidence as much as intention. 5 months after the trip, the scholarship held a neighborhood concert at the Arts Center. Damon called me 2 days before. His voice was careful. "Would it be all right if I came?" I waited. He added, "Not to help, not to speak. I just want to hear them play." I looked across the kitchen at Ruth. She could hear him through the phone. She nodded once. "You can come," I said. "You will sit with the audience." "I understand. And do not arrive with a check and turn it into a moment." There was a pause. "I won't." The evening of the concert, Ruth and I sat near the front. Marlene sat across the aisle. Damon arrived alone and took a seat several rows behind us. He did not approach the stage. He did not stand near the donor table or offer to move equipment. He simply sat down. Beside the stage stood Nia's shadow box. The white drumsticks were angled slightly toward the young musicians. Aaliyah lifted her sticks, and the room settled. The first rhythm began softly. Then the horns entered. Then the piano. For years, I thought being a good father meant standing between my son and every hard consequence. That night, I understood that love could stay without the hiding place. Damon had not regained authority. He had not finished restitution. Ruth and I had not forgotten what happened. But he was there honestly, just a man in the back row, listening while young people played music his sister once loved. When the final note faded, Ruth reached for my hand. Applause rose around us. I looked at Nia's drumsticks, then at my son. For the first time in years, I did not feel responsible for making either one of them larger or smaller than the truth. I felt peaceful. My son used my name to stop his own mother from asking questions. Tell me honestly, was that worse than taking the money? Say it in the comments, and subscribe for more wise dad stories.